going to start recording here so that people can catch up if they miss. What I want to start talking about today, though, is kind of the legal background side of protest songs. Because when we protest something, we want to make sure that what we're doing, what we're saying, is protected. So I'm going to share my screen again and throw up another question to kind of get us thinking about some stuff for today. All right. So go ahead and take another minute or two and see if you can come up with an answer to this question. You can put it in the chat or come off mute if that works better. But what does it mean to amend something? If you're not quite sure, you can take your best guess. But if you're amending something, what do you think you're doing? Oh, 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 excuse me. And if you're stumped, think about maybe where you've heard that word before, amend or an amendment, and what that might be, what it might mean. So again, take your best guess. What do you think? Any thoughts? Let's see what we got in the chat. I just make a change. Will you guess correctly? That is what it means. If you amend something, it means you are changing it, you're adding something to it, right? Something that wasn't there initially, all right? And when we think of this word, we probably think of amendments, right? Like the First Amendment, Second Amendment, right? And what we call all of those amendments are the Bill of Rights, okay? So, Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the US Constitution, right? Now, little quick mini social studies, lesson here. I'm sure, probably if you've had Mr. Townsend or Mr. Rogers, Constitution is the document we made after we became a country. So we have the Declaration of Independence, and then we have the Revolutionary War, and then after we win the Revolutionary War, now we become our own country, and we make our Constitution. And then we realize after the Constitution is made, hey, there's some stuff that we left out here. We have to add some things in. So then in 1791, right, we ratified the first 10 amendments to the US Constitution, which are still the most discussed and debated section of the Constitution to this day. Okay? So, do you know any amendments off the top of your head? What some of them are? Like what the First Amendment is, maybe what the Second Amendment is? Do you know any of them off the top of your head, or can you make a guess? You can put it in the chat if you want. some of these amendments might be. Maybe you've heard of before, maybe you've seen in movies or on TV. Any guesses as to what some of the amendments in the Bill of Rights are or what they have to do with? I'll put that question in the chat too, just in case you couldn't hear. And I'll throw a little hint in the chat as well, that a lot of them start with those two words. Yes, freedom of speech is definitely one. Oh, shoot, I missed one. Which is maybe even the most important one. That would be the First Amendment, freedom of speech, but not only speech, also press, religion, assembly, and petition. And these two right here, assembly and petition, are going to be important for what we're talking about with protest songs and protest music. Any other ones come to mind? Any other ones that you know or take a guess at? Any other ones you can think of? Any other guesses for other amendments in our Bill of Rights? How about the right to bear arms would be our Second Amendment. All right, that's another one that is, these two obviously probably the most debated everywhere across the country. So right to own guns, things like that. All right, that's our Second Amendment. Our Third Amendment is the Quartering Amendment. And the interesting thing about the Bill of Rights is a lot of these amendments, come from the time when it was written in 1791, where there was still, the possibility of a lot of these things happening, right around, or after the Revolutionary War. So the Quartering Amendment says that if, we're at war with another country and there's, soldiers walking around, they can't just come into your house and live there. Next, we have the right to search and seizure. Okay, this is kind of like, you have to go get a search warrant. You have to be, somebody can't just come into your house randomly and start looking through your things, right? Fifth Amendment, right to due process. So we see this in movies and TV, or maybe you've heard it in real life. Very common. I plead the Fifth Amendment, so you don't have to um, say anything you don't want to in a court of law, right? That's our Fifth Amendment due process. Right to speedy trial and attorney. Okay. Now, a lot of times we don't always have the speedy trial part, but when they read you your rights, you always have the right to an attorney. That's our Sixth Amendment. Okay. Right to a trial by jury. Okay. Seventh Amendment. Our Eighth Amendment is no cruel and unusual punishment. So, punishment has to fit the crime, sort of thing, right? Now, again, a lot of advocates for, people of color being in jail for nonviolent offenses, like maybe marijuana related offenses and stuff, who are serving 30 years or life sentences. A lot of those advocates argue that this that's unconstitutional because it might be considered cruel and unusual punishment, that it's a nonviolent offense and they're in jail for the same amount of time or even longer than somebody who's convicted of murder or rape or something like that. So this is another one that is, kind of important. All right, our Ninth Amendment, all right, is all the rights. The Ninth Amendment basically says anything we haven't listed here, you know, you have the right to do, right? So just kind of like a catch-all, cover your ass type of thing. And then lastly, our 10th Amendment is any rights that aren't covered in the Bill of Rights are delegated to the states. So like the drinking age and stuff like that. Okay. And these 10 amendments form our Bill of Rights. All right. So my next question is, of all of those, which amendment do you think is the most important and why? All right. So if you can answer this question in the chat for me, take a few minutes and do it right now. Thank you, Nish. Appreciate you. So we think the first one, which is freedom of speech, people need to be heard. I definitely agree. Um, a lot of people think that is the most important one. A lot of people argue it might be the second one, the right to bear arms, but a lot of, free speech advocates, there's kind of like a saying they have, which is, like there's a reason why the freedom of speech is the First Amendment, and then free right to bear arms is the second, because you should be able to speak first, and then maybe when you can't, you have to do something else. But I agree, and it's not. And remember, it's not just speech in that First Amendment. It's also freedom of religion, freedom of the press to be able to print whatever you want within certain confines. Freedom of petition, freedom of assembly. All those things go into what we're talking about with protest songs and protest music. And I think your point about people needing to be heard, especially now over this last year, I think is super important, and that kind of protects everybody's right to do that. Right? Really good job. Okay, so Now the key is in that First Amendment, the one we think is the most important, what is protected and what isn't. All right. So when we're making a protest song, or when we're out there protesting, maybe in the case of George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery, or any kind of those situations, what can we do and what can't we do? What is protected under our constitutional rights as protesters, and where is the line where, okay, now we're doing stuff that is not okay and it's not protected, right? That's what we want to figure out, because that'll kind of give us a little bit more context of when you write a protest song, can and you send it out there, put it on Spotify or the radio or whatever, can you be saying anything, or is there still some stuff that can get you in trouble, even though we have that freedom of speech amendment? Okay, so how are we going to figure this out? All right, I am going to do this real quick. All right, I'm going to put in the chat a link to a website that has a really good kind of breakdown of the First Amendment and its kind of background. All right. And then I have a few questions that will kind of help us recap everything they're talking about, so we can, again, figure out what's protected, what's not protected, how do we figure that stuff out. Okay, I'm gonna put those in the chat as well. All right, so if you click that link in the chat, it should bring you to a page that looks like this, like I have shared on my screen right now. All right, so just give me a thumbs up that you are able to pull up this link. Anisha, thank you very much. You can just put it in the chat. Just let me know that this link works and you're on the same page that I have right here. Cool, awesome. All right, so we have about like 10 minutes left. All right, let's do this, okay? You can copy paste those review questions, screenshot them, all right? And then when we come back in class tomorrow, just have those questions done by them. So you can send them to me in an email if that works. You can put them in a Google Doc and share that with me. All right. And then if you run into any trouble or have any questions, you can just email me or message me. All right. So that way you can, take as much time as you need to kind of read through that article and then get those questions answered. All right. So if all that makes sense, give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. Awesome. Yeah. So the where it says what I put in the chat where it says review questions, those are the ones I'm talking about. So use that link and then read through it and then answer those questions. Right. And just have them done by class tomorrow. Like I said, you can send it to me in an email if you want. You can put them in a Google Doc and share it with me. Whatever works best for you. All right. Awesome. Really good job today. I appreciate you hanging in here with me. The YouTube recording of class will be up later today if you want to go back and watch anything, and for everybody who missed as well. All right. So that's all I have for today. Get out of here a little bit early, and then I'll see you same time tomorrow. All right. Really good job. Thank you. See ya.